So I'm out here in a treehouse in the western Mojave Desert in 90-degree heat to tell you about the Rings of Power. Now, I watched season 1 when it first came out in 2022, and I was on the fence about it, although my feelings bordered more on the negative. The best way I could describe season 1 is that it felt like 5 different TV shows playing out at once, and none of them were that interesting. Still, as divisive as this show is, I think it can be hard to nail down exactly what is good or bad about it. Detractors might simply say it's not loyal to Tolkien's vision, which that is true enough. Amazon doesn't have the rights to the Silmarillion, Tolkien's official history text, so the plot is basically improvised by the writers from tidbits of lore. But personally, my metric for the quality of a TV show is not based on how loyal it is to Tolkien. I mean, Breaking Bad is not loyal to Tolkien, The Bear is not loyal to Tolkien, Gilmore Girls strays completely from Tolkien's original vision. While I think adaptational integrity matters, we've certainly seen what happens when fantasy shows stray too far from the original author's intentions. It's also undeniable that there exist hugely popular adaptations which diverge massively from their source material. My point is, I feel the obligation to judge the show on its own merits. That and I'm gonna level, I haven't actually read the Silmarillion. I called it dry in a previous video and people got mad at me. I heard it was boring. I have read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, but I can't. So putting aside adaptational changes, what is wrong with The Rings of Power? I think it's safe to say most people aren't criticizing this show for the visuals, although I could. Fucking uninspired blue and orange lighting, or the directing, mostly not the acting. So if there's a problem, it's gotta be the writing, right? But what exactly constitutes bad writing? Let's start with the obvious, dialogue. If the dialogue in this show was bad, that would be proof of bad writing, wouldn't it? The thing is, I actually like the dialogue.
My father and I are no longer on speaking terms.
What do you
You'd sooner convince an orc to sit for a sunbath and get the two of us in a room together.
That's what everybody calls me.
Well, if everybody calls you nobody, doesn't anybody call you somebody?
Boy, if we put your brains in a vulture, it'll fly backwards.
His eye bores a hole, and the rest of him slithers in.
The way characters talk, using world-appropriate language and metaphor, is a quality I associate with good dialogue in good shows. Shows like Andor and Game of Thrones. I've seen people call the dialogue pretentious, but that's a compliment, right? I mean, this is Tolkien we're talking about. It would be bad if the dialogue was unsophisticated. Like,
"Hey, what up, Elrond, my boy? Want a skibbity in Ohio, my Rizzler?"
So if the problem isn't the dialogue, then what is it? I think most people seem to agree that the problems are more structural. And here's my take on that. Like I said, season 1 felt like 5 different TV shows playing out at once. And that isn't a compliment. There is a right and a wrong way to use diverging storylines. Most principally, it is important that the storylines actually connect in some way. In Game of Thrones, the first episode and a half consists of almost all of our principal characters in one location before they go their separate ways, cementing character relationships and giving you a sense of the world's status quo before things go to shit. More importantly, Game of Thrones gives you things to want. You want to know who ends up on the Iron Throne. You want to see certain characters reunited. You want to see certain characters punished. You want to see certain characters get revenge on other characters. Watching Rings of Power Season 1, I didn't know what I was supposed to want. I didn't know why I was supposed to care. Oh, your stupid fucking elf tree is dying? I don't give a fuck. I fucked your mom. I mean, was I just hanging on until they could trot out the next piece of fan service? I can't really apologize for a show that's inaccurate to its creator's lore if it builds itself almost entirely on fan service from that lore. I mean, they had their little mystery boxes like, ooh, guess who's secretly Sauron? Is it this guy? Is it her? Him? But a show that's this grand in scale can't work off of mystery alone, especially when the answers are only passably satisfying. Part of the problem lies in trying to adapt Tolkien's work for TV at all. TV is an inherently character-driven medium, which draws the majority of its stakes from the mundane relationship trials between people. If you try to go too cinematic, it stops being good TV. But if you get too melodramatic and personal and soap opera-y, it stops being good Tolkien. So that's my assessment of Season 1 of Rings of Power, but what about Season 2? Honestly, the only reason I watched it at all was because I felt obligated to after releasing my controversial orc video. So let's just go through the season chronologically and I'll give my thoughts. The first couple of episodes didn't have me. It felt like the show was falling into the same trap of being too disconnected in its storytelling. I wasn't impressed with Sauron as a villain either. If someone is supposed to be a master manipulator, I want to see them manipulating, gaslighting, social engineering, not just telling straightforward lies and using magic to trick people. I mean, if you have to assume a whole fake identity to get people to do what you want, are you really that cunning of a puppet master? Still, things started to pick up. I'm not gonna lie, the ending of episode 3 popped the fuck off. And around episode 4, I was like, wait, do I actually like this show? Mind you, this was when I stopped watching on my laptop and started watching on an actual TV, so my eyes were like,
wow.
Then they introduced edgy Tom Bombadil, and I was like, oh no. Okay, so I don't hate Rory Kinnear's performance. I thought he brought a charismatic warmth to the character that is at least Bombadil-esque, but the way they introduce him, like he's a member of the fucking Avengers.
Who are you? Been a while since I've been called much of anything, but back in the Withy window, folk used to call me Bombadil. Tom Bombadil.
Kill me. I mean, in his brief appearance in the Fellowship of the Ring, this guy is a goofy weirdo who couldn't be trusted with the One Ring because he'd lose it. And this show treats him like he's Nick Fury. Don't get me wrong, Tom Bombadil certainly has an ancient, knowing quality to him in the book, but it's overridden by what a pure goofball he is. The idea of him being, God forbid, plot relevant just reeks of desperation to me. And while we're speaking of book elements omitted from the movie adaptation of Fellowship, I find it funny that this full party of elf warriors get ripped apart by the Whites in the Barrow Downs when Frodo and Tom fucking tag-teamed those fuckers. I do have to say, the elves come across as a lot less like the angelic beings of light that they're depicted as in the Peter Jackson films, and more like regular people with pointy ears. Again, going back to that divide between good TV being humanistic and good Tolkien being epic and archetypal. Getting back to Sauron, though, he's pretty good. I was saying earlier that they weren't selling me on the whole master manipulator thing, but the more his relationship with Celebrimbor evolves, the more it's like, okay, there he is. Like I said with Game of Thrones, it's important in TV to have characters you can hate, characters that you want to see brought down. That is where this season excels compared to its predecessor. If the heroes still feel a little undercooked, the villains this season were on a whole nother level. Sauron, Pharazôn, Kemen, and I'll say it, Aarion, are all peak hate watchable, which in part this comes from another strength, which is character disposability. Cause how do you create stakes in a prequel story? If we know what's going to happen, why do we care? Do we watch for the simple intellectual pleasure of seeing events play out in a preordained way? Oh no, is Galadriel gonna die? Is Elrond gonna die? The key to getting around this is simple. You introduce characters that aren't in the original source material. A great example of this would be Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which introduced fan-favorite characters like Captain Rex and Ahsoka Tano, along with a whole host of others. That way, instead of the preordained ending detracting from the stakes, it heightens them instead. We're drawn in because we want to know what will happen to these characters when the inevitable cataclysm occurs. The Rings of Power tried to do this in Season 1 with the Theo and Clord and Nimbo and Possum. But anyway, my point is, Season 2 cashed in. I don't really remember Valandil all that well from Season 1, but the way they got me invested in him this season, only to give him the axe, was brutal. And obviously there's my favorite character, Adar. King of my heart. Lord of my god damn it. God damn it. God fucking... So yeah, if you want to make characters evil, have them kill someone we like. It's that simple. I hate you, and especially, I hate you. That's right, I made a whole video defending you, you son of a bitch, and this is how you reward me? I hope your son gets orc polio. I hope he ends up like this orc from The Hobbit and... Wait, is this proof that the orcs offer accommodations to the differently abled? God damn, they really are the best race in Middle-earth. I take it back, I stand by everything I said in that video. The season ends with a suitable amount of action as the attack on Eregion they set up all season finally commences. And while I would definitely put the Balrog in the fan service category, I'll admit that scene went hard. Also, that awkward moment when your boyfriend chooses his wife over you. By the way, what's with the ending music on these episodes? Like, okay. Also, the Dark Wizard's music goes hard. Oh yeah, there was a Dark Wizard this season. It doesn't really matter. Overall, I would say Season 2 was a big improvement over Season 1. Part of that comes by virtue of simply being a second season, with the characters and conflicts better established. The question is this the highest the Rings of Power can reach? Apparently, this show was pitched as going for 5 seasons, although, frankly, I think it would be better if they wrapped it up in maybe 1 or 2. Celebrimbor and Sauron's relationship was a highlight of the show for me, and I can't really see them topping that plotline. It would be cool to get some drama with, the human and dwarven ring bearers, who haven't really been established yet. And obviously they're aiming to cap things off with the last alliance of men and elves. But yeah, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I've been on a fantasy kick lately, and I'm building a bigger appreciation for the genre as a whole. In fact, I might even be persuaded to watch the second season of The Wheel of Time, a show which I railed on in my fantasy TV video, but admittedly, I didn't make it all the way through Season 2, and some people have said it's a huge improvement on Season 1. I'm still a bit behind on my reading, but if you have any ideas for book series or TV shows that you would want me to watch, let me know in the comments. I've heard good things about the First Law trilogy, so I might be checking that out soon.